All right, here we go. We are off. Cards Camp Central, powered by Cox. Welcome in, everyone. Welcome to Cardinals Camp 2020 in State Farm Stadium. I'm Paul Calvisi. Cardinals definitely fired up to play some football, and we are most definitely fired up to cover it, no doubt. Our team is ready. We got, especially with the lineup. Check out the lineup, the game plan we have. I mean, we're loaded today like a plate of nachos here at State Farm Stadium. You kidding me? Plenty of highlights coming your way. Dave Pash is going to join us momentarily, the voice of the Cardinals. We'll get early impressions from Cardinals camp practice so far. We'll go read and react with some of the pressing issues with Dave Pash as well. All access, mic'd up, absolutely. This is where we go behind the scenes. You can hear what it's like to be a player here at Cardinals camp yourself, and we'll take you through that. Coach Kliff is going to join us one-on-one. We got news of the day to talk about. We got big picture stuff with the Big Red, so Coach Kliff is going to be here. He'll join us. Insider Darren Urban. How about D-Urb? He's going to be here, and you know what? We're going to have all the insight that he has gleaned from camp so far, plus he's going to be answering a few questions. We're going to throw at him as well. Unfiltered, we're going to go into a practice drill. What's it like to be a defensive player and fighting for a job in that fight for 53? So our cameras will take you behind the scenes on that one. Mailbag, we're going to answer your pressing questions. That'll come your way. But the most pressing question going into today, there's no doubt about it, the status of starting corner Robert Alford for the second straight year. It is a question, and for the second straight year, he is going to miss the season. It is official. He has a torn pec, a torn chest muscle, will need surgery. So Robert Alford, for all intents and purposes, is done for this season. Now, whether the Cardinals go out and they find a replacement, they're going to search the waiver wires or keep an eye out. Maybe, just maybe, we'll see a time sign. We'll see about that. We are going to see DeAndre Hopkins sometime soon, according to Cliff Kingsbury as well, as D-Hop missed practice today, but with the tight hamstring, shouldn't be a long-term deal. Chandler Jones, by the way, had a Veterans Day off. And our Kyle Odegaard tweeting out, this is interesting, 4 players so far that have caught the eye of head coach Cliff Kingsbury. Andy Isabella, who was bulked up, Jalen Thompson, the safety, Keyshawn Johnson, the Cardinals receiver, and Deontay Thompson. And guess what? All 4 of those players are second-year players. And if you're the Cardinals, that's exactly what you want to see, right? Making that jump from year 1 to year 2. Right now, let's get our first look and listen. Speaking of things we want to see, our first look and listen at the first day in pads for the Arizona Cardinals here at Cards Camp. You know the football season is near when we get the padded practice, and the voice of the Arizona Cardinals, Dave Pash, is on set. Dave is fresh off watching practice, something he's been doing for 2 decades as the voice of the Cardinals. Your biggest impression, your biggest takeaway after seeing the Cardinals 2020?
Well, 2 things, Paul. The first is how normal it seems. Nothing seems normal in our world, but when I was here on Monday for the first padded practice, seeing how chippy it got, it just felt like football.
Football
right?
is football when they blow the whistle.
Yeah. The other thing is Kyler Murray, and just watching him interact with guys. We all know last year when he got here, he was teaching people the offense, and it was a lot. He was in the role of teacher, where today, in previous days as well being here, it looked like he was just amongst friends, kind of watching him interact with players interact with teammates after they'd catch a touchdown pass. Not as much teaching, a lot of edifying and encouraging. It was a little bit more of what we saw from Kyler towards the end of last year, I think, as he grew into that leadership role. He understands that was an area he had to grow in. I think he's really matured, and I think that's a big reason why he's ready to take the next step this year.
And, you think about last season, how many times he really had Larry Fitzgerald and little else as a weapon. Cardinals got the running game in gear the second half of the season, set a franchise record better than 5 yards a carry. You give him a balanced offense with a real run game like they have now in Kenyon Drake, that fortified offensive line, and the likes of DeAndre Hopkins and a healthy Christian Kirk. Tell me about the upside in this offense with Kyler in year 2.
Well, I think DeAndre Hopkins changes everything. When the Cardinals made that deal and Adam Schefter tweeted it out, I immediately looked, is there a blue check mark next to Schefter's name? Is this faux Adam Schefter? Because I'm thinking, the Cardinals got DeAndre Hopkins? Wait, for David Johnson?
For a third-string running back?
So you add one of the best receivers in the game to a team that has a blossoming quarterback, an innovative head coach, a player in Christian Kirk, who I think is going to be a very productive NFL receiver for a long time. Obviously, Larry Fitzgerald. Because of Kenyon Drake, Dan Arnold, Max Williams, there's so many different weapons for Kyler Murray. And, Kyler Murray, he had some weapons at Oklahoma. He didn't have this. Cliff Kingsbury had Patrick Mahomes, but he didn't have this. He didn't have this many weapons. So I think right now you've got guys that are salivating. The head coach, the quarterback, at the weapons they have. But to me, it all starts with DeAndre Hopkins.
When they went up to Seattle in Week 16, they ran it 40-plus times for more than 200 yards. And then they competed, losing single-score games against the NFC champion Niners. And then they hung with the Rams, and even though Kyler was injured at the end of the season. To me, they sent a message, at least to the division a year ago, hey, we're here to compete. But is it more than that? What's realistic, you think, in this division, considered the toughest division in the NFL?
It is the toughest division, there's no question. And as you know, Paulie, we, year to year, really have no clue who is going to take that jump from worst to first or near the bottom to near the top. And maybe the Cardinals are that team because of what we saw. Seattle was a great example of that. I think what Cliff Kingsbury has proven is that he's willing to do what it takes. It doesn't have to be the air raid. It doesn't have to be Mike Leach's offense to win in the NFL. I think he realizes, look, there are times we're going to have to run 2 tight ends out there and play smash mouth football. Other times we're going to be able to spread it out. I just think the diversity of the offense, the multiple formations and things they can do off those formations make the Cardinals one of the most challenging teams to prepare for. And the fact you have no preseason games, even though if we would have had preseason games, we wouldn't have seen the Cardinals offense. It would have been something else because they're not going to put their offense on display for everybody.
Dave, they might be more regular season ready coming off this preseason because they're not wasting time with any sort of vanilla offense.
I agree 100%. And Cliff is used to this. There's no preseason in college football, so you're working on your offense every single day like you would in college to get ready for week 1. In week 1 in college football, most of the time you're playing a major opponent. Obviously in the NFL, everybody's a major opponent. So I think the Cardinals will be more ready than maybe some other teams who need preseason work. And I also think that it's going to be harder for teams to prepare for Arizona this year, especially early in the season.
Well, they're definitely, I think, going to be shocked by what the Cardinals look like on defense. Totally different in so many different areas. Look, on offense, you basically have one question. Who's the right tackle? And they're going to figure that out, who holds up best against Chandler Jones, for example. They'll figure that out in those camp battles. Chandler Jones is a known. Otherwise, that front 7 is really fortified. And now with Isaiah Simmons and Devondre Campbell, and you got this guys the size of Jordan Phillips and Lecky Fotu, the sight of those 2 guys standing next to each other, those 2 guys need to be the first 2 off the bus, by the way, okay? So you got that as your front 7. Vance Joseph really has a lot at his disposal to dial up now, doesn't he?
Yeah, those guys that you mentioned stand out. Like you watch practice, and Fotu stands out how big he is. Zach Allen, can't forget about him. And then Jordan Phillips, of course. They've severely upgraded that front 7. And Chandler Jones probably has the best guy opposite him that he's had. Marcus Golden was a really good player. They've had some other good players. Obviously, Terrell Suggs, over the course of his career, is a Hall of Famer. But in terms of where Kennard is in his career with Chandler Jones, I think it's the best tandem they've had on the outside. And Isaiah Simmons, he's the wild card. Is he going to be able to come in with no preseason games and get used to the speed of NFL tight ends, NFL running backs coming out of the backfield, understanding what he's seeing pre-snap? Given his versatility and what he had to do, what Brent Venables had him do at Clemson, I think he's ready for it. Paulie, I watched him in person twice last year, and Isaiah Simmons stands out. Obviously, physically he stands out, but just what he does with his eyes, how he sees things, and clearly his athletic ability, he, to me, is the wild card in that defense. So it'll be interesting to see how Vance Joseph uses him. And because of no preseason, does it take a while for them to employ Isaiah Simmons in different ways? Or do they say, we've had 20-plus practices, we're ready. We're ready to throw him out there and say, okay, you're going to cover receiver here. Here you're going to play in a situation where you're going to rush the passer. I mean, I'm really interested to see what they do with him the first 3 weeks of the season.
I don't minimize the rookie learning curve. It's significant. I get it. But this guy's been the exception at every single level. Here's a guy who got more than 100 snaps at Clemson at 5 different positions last year. If anyone can come in and be that X factor, I'm not reporting, I'm just surmising that if he ends up being utilized in a lot of different ways in week 1 at the Niners, third down, obvious passing situations, key downs, or, I don't know, maybe he's a trail blitzer or they bring him in to stack the edge. They dial him up. I would not be surprised on that. How about the loss of Robert Alford? How big? Because we know Vance Joseph had talked about it. If I have 2 outside reliable corners, then I can dial up the other 9, and that's where a 3-4 defense really sings.
I understand why people are saying it's big. But at the same time, we really don't know how big it is because Robert Alford basically hasn't played now in 3 years. He was hurt at the end of his career in Atlanta. He was hurt last year. He's hurt this year. The assumption is based on practice and what we saw last year that he was going to be impactful and maybe the best corner opposite Pat P that they've had. But it's hard to say because is Byron Murphy ready to take that next step? They drafted Byron Murphy where they did for a reason. They had the grade on him they did for a reason. So,
top of the second round, yep.
And the grade was much higher than that grade. Was a
True.
Top 10. So if Byron Murphy turns out to be the player that Cardinals think he can, maybe it's not as big of a loss. Of course, this day and age, you can never have too many cover guys. Yeah. And can the other guys, Kevin Peterson and Chris Jones, can they step up? Alford's experience will be missed, there's no question. But just not knowing where he is with his stamina and just the fact he hasn't played. It's so hard in the NFL when you haven't played that many games over a 2 or 3 year span really to gauge where he is. But I understand why people are saying it's big just looking at the depth that they have.
And if Pat P is the all-decade corner that we think he's going to be again this season, then remember, you have that. And a lot of teams don't have. You can just put Pat P, step 1 of every game plan is on the other team's number 1 receiver, and that's a luxury a lot of defensive coordinators don't have, that's for sure. All right, how about a little read and react here, Dave, okay? I read, you react. Ready?
First of all, this is interesting because normally we're with Wolf and his answers are a minute and a half. Yeah. We don't normally have this much time to actually get to this segment.
We're actually going to run the no huddle because there's no Ron Wolfley. Okay, we're going to go up tempo here. Read. Kyler Murray says it's definitely possible the Cardinals could have a trio of 1,000-yard receivers. React.
Is one of those 1,000-yard receivers a tight end or a running back? I mean, I think it's really possible based on just how many times, well, I said this last year, how many times they're going to throw the ball. We really don't know. DeAndre Hopkins is a given. Assuming he plays most of the season, that's a given. You're getting 1,000 yards. I think if Christian Kirk is healthy, he's getting 1,000 yards.
They have great chemistry, Kyler and Christian Kirk.
Larry Fitzgerald, assuming he is able to do what he's always done, and I have no reason to think he won't be able to because it's not like in year 17 that Fitz all of a sudden has to do something different. I mean, the type of receiver he is and how the Cardinals use him, I don't think much changes for him, so that's possible. Kenyon Drake, how are they going to use him in the passing game? So I think it's an excellent possibility the Cardinals have 3 guys over 1,000.
Yeah. What happens when Larry gets a number 3 corner on him, right? Now he's getting the number 3 corner. What does that mean? Kenyon Drake, read, doesn't feel like the offensive line gets enough credit league-wide. React.
I think one of the most important things the Cardinals did when they hired Cliff Kingsbury, the point was, okay, we want to hire an innovative head coach who's going to call plays and have that interpersonal relationship with the quarterback. The second thing is hire a defensive coordinator with head coaching experience. They did that in Vance Joseph. Number 3, hire a stud offensive line coach. They did that with Sean Kugler. Watch the growth from the beginning of last year towards the end of last year with that offensive line. And they were together most of the year, so that helped. I think DJ Humphrey's emergence, the guys around him, I agree. I don't think they get enough credit. And just having another year under their belt in this offense, knowing that, hey, we're not afraid to line up and smash people in the face. But also we're going to have to be ready for a couple things, a passing game and for Kyler to run. As an offensive lineman, when you have a quarterback that can run like Kyler Murray, and sometimes it puts you in a dilemma when you're not used to it. But now they are. So I think that offensive line takes another jump this year.
And especially in the red zone. If those red zone numbers are among the league best instead of near the bottom like last year, and a lot of that was impacted by September, I look for this team to take really lift off this year.
You got to be able to run in the red zone.
Yep.
Cardinals showed last year they can do that, not just with a running back, but with their quarterback as well.
All right, the inside of Dave Pash, voice of the Cardinals, minus Ron Wolfley. So, boom, you actually got to talk. That was solid. We appreciate it, Dave.
It's a first for everything, colleague.
And one of the great competitive advantages here on Cards Camp Central, powered by Cox, is that we get you all access inside practice. We're on board, wired up, mic'd up with Devon Kennard.
First day of pads, man. How you feeling?
Real good, man. It's about time. Been a long time, 8 months. Let's get going. Put them paws on somebody. Go time, baby.
All right, great all-access stuff there from Devon Kennard. As you can see, we're now joined by the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury. And, Coach, let's start with the most recent news as of today, and it's not good news, unfortunately, regarding Robert Alford. What's the latest?
Yeah, Rob, unfortunately, tore his pec, and just heartbroken for him as a player. Such a competitive cat who worked his tail off to get back in shape after last year and was so excited to actually play in Vance's system and play for us and play across from Pat, and then to have this happen, you're just devastated for him because he's such a good person. He's everything that you want in your organization from that standpoint, and so our heart goes out to him.
I know going into camp, you were asked some of the things you were going to watch. You listed the linebacker spot, D-line, and then Robert Alford actually number one. I mean, his presence this year was going to be significant, wasn't it?
It was, like I said, simply because of all the off-the-field things he brings. When you're talking about intensity, competitiveness each and every day, I mean, he's out there bringing it. And so you hate to see that happen to a guy like that. But it's next man up. We understand that. There'll be nobody feeling sorry for us in this league, and everybody's dealing with those type things when you're in August.
What can you tell us about the next man up? I know you like Byron Murphy inside, but he also has experience playing outside. Where do you go now?
Yeah, that's something we'll work through. Byron obviously got a ton of reps out there last year in live game action. We started him in the nickel this year, but he can slide out and play outside if we need to. And then you got Kevin Peterson and Chris Jones, two guys who got significant time last year as well. And so we'll see kind of how that shakes out, but we'll continue to work through that.
D coordinator Vance Joseph a few days ago, he mentioned how he had watched film of camp practice from last year of Pat P and Robert Alford, and how the defense is different, in his words, when you have those two cover corners. Can you still achieve that? Can you still aim for that here this season?
No question. I mean, last year Vance dealt with worst case scenario when you're talking about having number 21 and Rob out for the first 6 weeks. And so he has some work at kind of adjusting to it and doing different things to help those guys out. And so we'll have a good plan moving forward.
First day of pads, your thoughts and takeaways. Kenyon Drake saying, it got chippy a few times, but hey, that's a good thing for the most part, right?
It is. It is. You expect that. You expect to see kind of the intensity pick up, and I thought it did. Guys have been sitting around for a long time waiting for that day, and to finally get it out there and having it look like some semblance of football was good for all of us. I think it was therapeutic for all of us to be out there, and we got to learn how to practice together and keep that intensity, but stay focused and get accomplished what we need to get accomplished.
Without any preseason games, do you try and replace that physicality and that full contact during camp? How do you approach that as a head coach and just the level of physicality in this camp?
You do. I think you pick your spots and you kind of monitor your team and where you think they're at and make sure more than anything that you build up to that point. Once again, guys have not done a lot of football activity for a long time. And so you got to be smart, but you also need to feel that, full contact physicality before the week one. And so that's that fine line you're walking during training camp this year.
Of course, all eyes on Kyler Murray. And Kyler was telling the media that when he really took off in high school and then his Heisman campaign at Oklahoma, he got to the point where he could read the defense and know what they were doing, in his words, before they did it. How close is he to that stage now in the NFL, you think?
Definitely closer than last year. I think after going through that season and it was such a blur for him and kind of just trying to keep his head above water at times, the game has definitely slowed down. You can see it already in training camp. His understanding of our system, he's able to not just kind of figure out where our guys are going. Now he can see where the defense is lining up and see the things we're trying to take advantage of. And so that's exciting to watch as a position coach. We know he has all the natural ability in the world, and you take that next step mentally and good things could happen.
We go on the road last year, people would ask about Kyler. I'd say, you know what? You got to remember, he's not a running quarterback. He's a pocket quarterback who can run. Would you agree with that?
No question. I mean, he's one of the best throwers of the football that I've ever been around, and I've been fortunate enough to see some really good ones up close. And he can spin it with anybody. He's accurate, great footwork in the pocket, great pocket presence, and he just happens to be able to run really fast when he does need to.
So we know what he does and his impact against the defense. Chase Edmonds calls him that extra blocker because he occupies another defender. What about adding DeAndre Hopkins? What does an elite X-receiver, outside receiver, do to some of the coverages you may or may not see this year compared to maybe last year?
Yeah, I mean, he's always a threat to make a big play. I mean, he's one of the top guys in the league, has been that for a long time. So defenses always have to account for where he's at. And when they do, they're usually going to have to push another guy that way or give some sort of help. And when they do that, we feel like we have some other weapons that we can take advantage of. And so it'll be interesting to see how they play us with that added piece. But we're just thrilled to have him. Love everything he's about, and should be fun to watch.
I mentioned camp battles, position battles. Where do you go? What have you seen about a week into camp or so?
I think good competition. I think guys are still getting their legs underneath them, their football legs underneath them. I think that'll kind of continue for the remainder of this week. And then next week, I really expect it to pick up when you're talking about, hey, we've had a week to settle in, have the full pads on, get our football conditioning back. And now let's see kind of how the cream rises at the top. And so excited to see how this progresses.
Back end of the receiver room, right tackle, would those be among the top camp battles, you think?
No question. I think right tackle signing Beacham there late was huge. A guy who started in this league for a long time, had played for Coach Kugler before. Justin Murray did a nice job in the games he started last year. You draft Josh Jones, who we feel like could have easily been a first round pick. Got him in the third, and he's progressed nicely. So there's some real talent there. And then back half of that wide receiver room. I mentioned, two young guys earlier to the media, and Andy and Keyshawn came back kind of with a different look in their eye, different bounce in their step. And Trent Sherfield's a guy who has played a lot of football here, and we have a lot of confidence in. So we're excited about that room.
What would you say about the identity of the Cardinals offense this year? I've had a few guys tell me, you know what? We're not waiting around to see what the defense is doing and dissect and react to the defense. We're making them defend us. Is that pretty accurate?
I think we want to push the tempo, and we want to do what we do. We don't ever want to be reactionary and kind of wait back and be passive in our approach. And that's, last year I mentioned it a long time, but about the first month we were figuring things out, and I felt like as we got going into the season and got comfortable with our personnel and how we wanted to operate, we took a big step. And I expect us to take an even bigger step this year with all the returners we have back, and with Kyler in year 2 after getting so many reps last year.
was intrigued by your comment in the offseason with all the time during the pandemic. You really hit the film hard. You went deep into multiple levels of football. Like, how deep did you go? What exactly did you look at?
I mean, I got to XFL film, if that tells you kind of where we were at. But there was a lot of downtime at the house. But no, I got to really dive into college football farther than I'd been able to the last couple years, and see some concepts and some different things I thought could probably help us be a better team. And so it was a good time just to do a lot of studying, a lot of self-scouting, and really take a deep dive into what's going on around the offensive landscape in football these days.
So as the play caller, are we going to see some of those this year? Are those going to emerge on your laminated play sheet?
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. I mean, we're going to try and master the fundamentals and basics over the next few weeks and get our guys back into playing football, but then we'll have some fun once the season gets here, hopefully.
Speaking of, have any rookies had to sing yet? Are any of those camp traditions still alive and well here in 2020? How does that work?
They'll be alive and well. They may be from a more distanced approach and not quite as intimate of a setting, but we'll definitely find a way to make them kind of prove their singing skills at some point or another.
Once upon a time, when you were a rookie with the Patriots, what did you have to endure? Rookie hazing.
Yeah, I sang Friends in Low Places by Garth Brooks, and then I got the shaved head and the lines in the eyebrow from Brady. And the eyebrow doesn't grow back. I don't know if you've ever done that. It doesn't grow back for a long time. So I looked real sketchy for about 8 months there in Boston.
I was going to say maybe Brady had you getting donuts, but he doesn't touch donuts, right? It's like avocado toast, right?
He was already drinking like Propel waters and eating unsalted like nuts at that point.
All right, Coach. Thanks for the time.
Thank y'all.
There you go. Head Coach Kliff Kingsbury. All right, so Coach Kingsbury there, he survived the Tom Brady rookie hazing and lived to tell about it, although his eyebrow was worse for wear for quite a long time. So there you go. Special thanks to Coach Kingsbury. We bring in Darren Urban via Zoom as well. And yes, we're practicing social distancing here, poly protocols, but the honest truth is that I'm just not on the same tier status as Darren Urban. So the closest I can get to the Cardinals insider is via Zoom. And there you go as he flaunts it. Okay, Darren. So we react now to what Coach Kingsbury told us. And look, there's a lot of good news out here at Cardinals camp, but the Robert Alford headline, definitely not one of them, a sobering reality. If anything, they've dealt with this before. They did it last year. So how equipped is this team to deal with losing starting corner Robert Alford most likely for the season?
Well, I mean, the reality is when you have a starter go down, you're not completely equipped because you were counting on that guy to start for you. I think they're in a better place than they were last year because Byron Murphy does have a year under his belt, but they were already kind of thinking about what is our depth going to look like anyways beyond those top three guys. And if you move Murphy up the depth chart and you don't have Robert Alford, that only intensifies that question. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with what they have in-house and if they might sign some veteran who's on the street right now to be able to play some kind of significant role for them.
And we've seen it. Steve Keim has a history of August Keim time signs that have really panned out. So we'll see. He has his eye out, what's available. Let's take your eyes inside a Cardinals defensive drill here. We're going to go with Bill Davis, the linebackers coach. He's running a drill designed for all the defenders. We talk about social distancing and full contact football, but it doesn't always involve hitting each other. You see the heavy bag, and it's geared up, and guys can come in. You're going to see a lot of backup corners here involved in this, and you're going to see Patrick Peterson, number 21. Patrick Peterson, Darren, has a different look in his eye in this camp, does he not?
Yes. I mean, I think, and we got a sense of that even earlier in the offseason, Paul, when he did that near hour Zoom press conference with the media. I thought he was upbeat. People were asking about his contract situation. He's up after this year, and yet while it bothers, I mean, I wouldn't say it bothers him. Obviously, he knows about it, but I don't think it's something that's going to be on the front of his mind, and I think that's a good sign. I think Patrick knows after what happened last year with his suspension and everything that went down with that, I think he knows that he's got to have a big year, and I think he knows the contract will come with a big year. And so, yeah, I think he's approached this in a different way. I think there's a certain business-like edge to him. I don't think you've lost the Patrick Peterson smile, but I think he knows what's at stake here.
Yeah, the young receivers get a welcome to the NFL moment when they go up against Pat P in these drills out here at Cardinals camp. There's no doubt about that. I think around the NFL, there's two misnomers about the Cardinals. One, the state of the O-line. They're way off the mark on that. And then number two, that Cliff Kingsbury, now that he has the weapons in the receivers room, is truly going to air it out. It's going to become air raid football in the NFL. I'm not buying that. Darren, they averaged over 5 yards a carry a year ago, a franchise record. They have Kenyon Drake. They paid him like one of the top 6 paid running backs in the league this year. How balanced is this offense going to be, you expect?
Well, I mean, I think the idea is always to balance on a certain level. But I mean, you were certainly Mark Dalton speaking to drive by here. I think with the way Kenyon Drake played last year and the fact that Kenyon Drake will have a full training camp, was around. I know we didn't have the off season, but at least he was part of those meetings. He mentioned in an interview that he now knows the why of the offense. And I do think that makes a difference to a lot of guys. And Cliff Kingsbury said he was playing on instinct last year and he produced at a really high level. I can only imagine knowing the why, what that might translate into, what he could mean to Kyler Murray, to this offense. And when you add in DeAndre Hopkins, I mean, you can see why the expectations are pretty high.
What have you seen out of D-Hop? And I know we haven't seen him the last couple of days. He's expected back soon, but you did see enough to realize the elite receiver he is, didn't you?
There was one play in particular that I remember early in camp where he took a short hitch route. He was about 2-3 yards in front of the cornerback, planted, turned, caught it, and then did this unbelievable spin move. It was akin to a basketball player breaking the ankles of his defender. It was the same kind of thing. He got totally loose and got down the field. And that was a play that I really noticed. But I think beyond that, Paul, what I've noticed is how engaged he is with everybody. I mean, you got a new player. He's going to want to learn the offense. We get all that. But sometimes when guys do it, they're more low key or they're not working as hard. I feel like from what I've seen from afar, DeAndre Hopkins has been super intense on talking to Kyler Murray and talking to Larry Fitzgerald and talking to David Rye and Jerry Sullivan and Cliff Kingsbury to understand what he's trying to do out here and to lessen that learning curve for himself.
You know, I was talking to receivers coach David Ryan, the Big Red Rage, the radio show, and he cited the first thing he noticed about DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, the world-class hands, the athleticism, but that tenacity and just the fight in him. If you remember that 2017 game, Patrick Peterson and DeAndre Hopkins, that was like hand-to-hand combat. You had two guys going at it. Now, speaking of, Darren, you have the scars to prove that you've done the mailbag for many years, correct? So why don't we dip in here? We got a question from Mando, and he wants to know, with Alford gone, should the nickel packages have Isaiah Simmons at some of those nickel spots, replacing Byron Murphy if Murphy moves out to the outside?
Well, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury was asked directly if Isaiah Simmons' role could change now that they don't have Alford. And Cliff basically said he doesn't expect that to happen. They're going to continue to do what they had already planned on doing. Now, maybe that included some work with Isaiah Simmons and some kind of coverage, but I don't know if it's going to change a lot. What Alford being out does in my head is it does open up that potential where maybe in some certain passing situations, you do use maybe 3 linebackers out there instead of a straight nickel or whatever it might be, depending on the situation, where Isaiah Simmons can do both. But I will say that watching Isaiah Simmons early in practice so far, and we're super early, you can tell there's a learning curve for him too. And I don't think he's all the way there yet by any stretch of the imagination. And I think the coaches want to be very certain that knows what he's doing in his specific jobs right now before we start putting a whole bunch more on him because the guy got hurt.
All right, how about a veteran newcomer to that front seven? Next question, and I quote, is Devon Kennard really the solution to the Cardinals' second pass rusher needs opposite Chandler Jones? Your answer is?
My answer is we'll see. I mean, I don't think anybody thought when they signed Devon Kennard that they thought they were bringing in, a Bradley Chubb to Chandler Jones's Von Miller. I mean, I think Kennard has been a nice player. I think he can give you a lot of versatile kind of aspects to his game. He's not a guy who's going to pile up 12 or 15 sacks a year. That's just not who he is. So if fans are expecting that, then you're probably not going to see that. But the idea was when he came in, you solidified that to a certain extent. You got a smart player, good in the locker room. You mix him in with Isaiah Simmons or what you might want to do with Devondre Campbell. And in theory, at the time, you had two cover corners like Alford and Peterson, which obviously now gets changed around, you had some chances to do some different things. I don't know what Devon Kennard is going to do this year, but I do think they needed some stability because they didn't have anybody until they signed him.
I'll say this. You can't help but notice Jordan Phillips, the big free agent signee, and we do mean big, all 6'6", 340-something pounds, and standing next to Aleki Fotu, who is the Utah fourth rounder, and 6'5", 340-something himself. Those two have goal line defense written all over them. And then you wonder what Jordan Phillips is going to be able to do with Chandler Jones. And Chandler's already mentioned that in camp, that he loves the upside of a Jordan Phillips, and that could be formidable, no doubt about it. Next question for Darren Urban, Cardinals insider. Who has showed off the most among the wide receivers battling for that 4 spot and beyond?
You know, a name that doesn't get
and Darren might be leaving us hanging on the name that doesn't get enough attention. Try it again, Darren, from the top.
Said a whole bunch, and I think a lot of this has to do with the trust he's earned over the years. I think Sherfield is a certain steady kind of guy that can be in there if he needs to. But ultimately, we all know it's those other guys that we're looking at. And I have noticed Andy Isabella. He's a different role than Sherfield, but I think he's a little bit bigger. He's definitely playing with more confidence. And from everybody I've talked to, he has a chip on his shoulder that he knows that everybody's kind of wondering what he can be. And I think he wants to show that he can be worthy of a second-round pick.
Last question, real quick. Someone wants to know, how are the players and coaches mentally preparing for this season versus seasons past? Just the difference in the protocols and the pandemic. Have you noticed a palpable difference in vibe?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing right now is that they're trying not to notice it too much. I mean, they're going through the protocols. You can't miss them no matter what you're doing around here, whether it's wearing a mask or getting tested every day or whatever that might be. But I think, again, and I heard Dave Pash say it earlier in the show, when they're out on the practice field, okay, there's a few masks out here. It feels like a regular training camp practice minus the fans. And I think that's, once they're in the element of actually playing football, I think that's the attitude they're trying to take right now.
All right, Darren, keep it coming, azcardinals.com. We're going to close you out, and I do mean close you out. This great thing about having you on the laptop before you flaunt that Tier 2 status again. We're literally going to say thank you and close you out at the same time. All right, you know what? That is enough for Darren right there. But we'll be back on Friday. Rumor has it Cardinals color analyst Ron Wolfley will be joining Craig Grialou on Friday. And by the way, mentioning Pash and coming full circle on this one, the Cardinals broadcast team, let's not bury the lead. Kyler Murray looks unbelievable. In the words of Cliff Kingsbury, super extra is how Kyler Murray has looked so far in this camp. We all know how that works. Have QB, will travel, right? Come for the arms, stay for the legs is our marketing mantra from last year, and it most definitely holds true this year. So special thanks to everyone for making it all possible. Cards Camp Central, powered by Cox. We'll see you again on Friday. But first, we leave you with more football.